There's a story that made headlines today, and there's two ways to look at it. It's quite alarming. They predict every year what the deficit will be. It used to not be always that there was necessarily going to be a deficit, but that's how it's been for as long as at least I think the entire decade. So this year they've predicted a 1.2 trillion dollar deficit, which eclipses last year's $455 billion deficit. Now these numbers are astronomical. They're hard to fathom. They're hard to grasp. They're hard to put your mind around. This you have to take this with a grain of salt and realize that the debt, the amount owed by this country to different sources is I think $11.2 trillion. Um, and what are we to make of this? Someone recently asked about do you follow politics and world events. The United States is, and this happened also in the late 20s and the 30s when the stock market here crashed. It triggered, and it's hard to say if it triggered or if this was happening anyways, part of the natural cycle of economy and economies, a depression, an international global depression. I saw, and eventually, I don't know, in Germany, after they were rebuilding from World War One, when things got really tough, they were taken back by a very charismatic leader who ended up starting what he called the Third Reich, and he had a plan that it was going to last 1,000 years, and Germany was going to eventually absorb all of Europe. I don't know exactly, but his plan was foiled, thankfully, eventually. But now we're seeing again that globally times are very tough. There's a lot of tension, and in America, which always prides itself really on its economy, not really its culture, not really its um, production of. It doesn't have any more of the natural resources. It's more of a service-based economy, but it likes to boast that New York City is the major metropolis of the world, the business capital of the world, and Los Angeles, and it has Hollywood. It has puts out entertainment and music and business, basically. Computers. It has Silicon Valley. It has a lot of. America's known for its money, basically, and now they're projecting that we owe 1.2. We're gonna end up losing 1.2 trillion dollars. This to me, people used to come to America for the money, and now the country itself owes 11.2 trillion dollars, and it's gonna lose another 1.2 trillion dollars projected. This to me is a sign of the messianic redemption, and that's why I'm choosing to look at this because once we realize even this is a small country, people lose sight of the fact of how insignificant America is in terms of the globe. We have approximately, I think the census will reveal, which is coming in 2010, like 200, maybe 300 million people, let's say a rough estimate, and the global population is going to be probably around 6.4 billion, approximately. So it's a drop in a bucket. It's not a major country. It got notoriety when it dropped nuclear weapons. The only country that ever did such a thing, that commits such a horrific act. But and it's been kind of a bully on the in the international scene, pushing its way around. It made a big enemy out of communism, and it would incite coups in different parts of the world. And everyone knew they dropped the bomb once, they might be crazy enough to do it again. So they kind of bullied their way through the latter part of the last century. But at this point, I think when Americans, and not just Americans, but people, even in Africa and even in Asia and Europe, Australia and South America, when they wake up and they see that which America is known for is no longer there, meaning the money is not in America, I think this will really have an effect on people that they're going to start to look around and ask themselves, so what is important? What is worthwhile? What is worth pursuing? And I think it'll be under this kind of framework that America itself is going to have to start asking for help. That people are going to realize that what aches us all is the thought that someone on the other side of the globe doesn't have what he needs physically. And I think it'll be in this kind of forum. I think eventually what's going to happen, they're going to have some kind of economic forum, and they're just going to hopefully decide that instead of competing, having economies compete with each other, because competition in terms of financial, in a financial way, leads only to corruption, to greed, to cheating, to dishonesty. Instead of working together like we're all taught to do when we're younger, and once we do that in a more global way, I mean, once America sits down and says, "Listen, we have nothing left here. Our storehouses are empty. We're dry to the bone. We can't." I know they had the UN has like Millennium Development Goals for Africa, and the U.S. is I think behind on their pledges because there's no money left in America. But once this, in America at least, the rich people in America, and not the rich people, everyone, wakes up to this fact that, look, there's an entire continent, as bad as it is here, there's still deworming food in Africa for school children. And once we realize that that should be our main concern, and we take on a responsibility on a more global level of feeding the poor and housing them and clothing them properly, so that everyone has at least the basic necessities of life, access to medical care and properly. I mean, not just what they have now, but compared to what we have. You know, here it's not great, but once we start thinking as a planet, as one, these numbers of 1.2 trillion and 11.2 trillion, they will melt away, and we'll realize they were just numbers we invented in our own little warped sense of economy and globalization, discounting the fact that we all want the same things, we all are concerned about the same things, and we are all people, and my right to life isn't greater than yours because I'm in America and you're from the Congo. And once we get the people in the Congo to kind of go away from warfare and focus more on providing for everyone's needs, things will get much clearer, and these types of numbers I think will disappear. I would love feedback on this type of thoughts, and let me know if I'm just being delusional or overly optimistic, or if you see that this could be hopefully a trigger of something much greater, being a focus on the spiritual as opposed to the physical, and a focus on unity as opposed to a focus on diversity, on divisiveness. Thank you so much. God bless.